Daniel didn't hear the girl at first. What he heard was the train. Loud, rushing, getting closer. The sound of everything he had worked for finally arriving, because in less than 10 minutes, that train would take him to the one opportunity that could change his life forever. A six-figure job, a clean start, a future that didn't involve counting coins before buying food. He had waited years for this moment, years of rejection emails, years of being overlooked, years of pretending he was fine when he wasn't. And now, finally, something had gone right. So when the voice came again, faint, broken, barely even human, "Please," Daniel almost ignored it. Almost. Because it didn't make sense. Not here, not now, not when everything was finally about to change. He tightened his grip on the folder in his hand and kept walking toward the platform. And the cold bit harder that night, cutting through his coat like it wasn't even there. The station was nearly empty, just a few scattered strangers, all minding their own business, all pretending not to see each other. Just like they always did. Just like he should. Help! This time he stopped. Not because he wanted to. Because something in that voice didn't sound like a problem. It sounded like the end of something. Slowly, reluctantly, Daniel turned his head. And that's when he saw her. Curled up on the freezing concrete like she didn't belong to the world anymore. Shaking so badly it looked like her body was trying to disappear. Too still, too quiet, too wrong. Daniel swallowed. No, he muttered under his breath, shaking his head slightly. This wasn't happening. Not tonight. Not now. Anywhere but now. And he glanced at the digital board above the tracks. 8:47 p.m. Train arriving. 3 minutes. That was all he had. 3 minutes to choose between the life he had been chasing for years and a stranger who might not even survive the night. His chest tightened, not from the cold, but from something far heavier. Anticipation, fear, hope, the dangerous kind. He exhaled slowly, watching the mist form in front of him. "Don't mess this up," he muttered under his breath. Because this interview, wasn't just another opportunity. It was the opportunity. After years of rejection emails, unanswered applications, and interviews that ended with polite smiles and empty promises, Daniel had finally been called in by a rising tech investment firm based in the city. A firm known for turning ordinary ideas into million-pound empires. And somehow, they had seen something in him. A junior analyst role, high stakes, high reward. If he got it, his life would change overnight. No more scraping by, no more choosing between rent and food, no more pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. This train, this exact train, was taking him to the overnight prep session before the final interview. Miss it, and he missed everything. Daniel tightened his grip on the folder tucked under his arm. Inside were printed notes, research, numbers he had memorized until they blurred in his sleep. He had worked too hard for this. Too many nights, too many sacrifices, too much hope. A sharp gust of wind swept across the platform, carrying with it the faint sound of footsteps. Daniel barely noticed at first. People came and went, a few late commuters, and a couple arguing quietly near the stairs. A man pacing with his phone pressed to his ear. Normal. Everything normal. Until it wasn't. Because then, he saw her. At first, she looked like a pile of discarded clothing near the far bench, something someone had left behind without care. But then she moved, just slightly. A tremor. Daniel frowned, squinting through the dim light. There was someone there, curled up, small, too still. He hesitated. His first instinct was simple. Not my problem. Because that's what you learned in a city like this. You didn't get involved. You didn't assume. You kept your head down and moved forward, especially tonight, especially now. But something felt off. Another shiver passed through the figure, not subtle this time, violent. Daniel shifted his weight, glancing down the tracks. No train yet. He looked back at the girl. Yes, girl. He could see it now. Young, maybe late teens, early 20s at most. Her clothes, what he could make out of them, were wrong for the weather. Too thin, too exposed. And there was something else, something unsettling. She wasn't just cold. She was fading. Daniel swallowed. Someone will help, he muttered to himself, almost defensively, as if saying it made it true, as if saying it meant he didn't have to. A couple walked past her without even slowing down. Another man glanced briefly, then looked away. No one stopped. No one cared. Daniel's jaw tightened. He looked at his watch again. 8:45 p.m. 5 minutes. He took a step back, then another. He turned slightly toward the tracks, forcing his focus forward. This is not your responsibility. You have a future waiting. Don't throw it away. And the wind picked up again, and with it, a sound. A weak, barely audible whisper. Help! Daniel froze. His heart slammed against his ribs. He didn't want to hear that. He shouldn't have heard that, because now it wasn't just a situation. It was a choice. He clenched his fists. Damn it! Another glance at his watch. 8:47 p.m. 3 minutes. The distant rumble of the approaching train began to vibrate through the rails. It was coming. This was it. His moment. His one chance. He took a deep breath and started walking toward the train line. 1 step, 2, 3. Please. The word cracked through the cold air like glass. Daniel stopped, slowly, painfully. He turned his head. The girl hadn't moved much, but her hand had shifted slightly, fingers trembling against the concrete as if reaching for something that wasn't there. And something inside him snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, decisively. Damn it, he whispered again, this time with no hesitation. He turned fully and walked toward her. Each step felt heavier than the last, like he was walking away from something important. Because he was. By the time he reached her, the train's headlights were already visible in the distance. Too late to turn back. Too late to pretend he hadn't seen. He crouched beside her. Up close, it was worse. Her lips were pale, her skin almost bluish under the harsh station light. Her breathing shallow, uneven. She wasn't just cold. She was dangerously cold. Hey! Hey, can you hear me? Daniel said, his voice softer now, urgent. Her eyes fluttered open slightly, glass-like, unfocused. They took everything. Her voice was barely there. Daniel frowned. Who did? What happened? But she didn't answer. She couldn't. Another shiver tore through her body. Instinct took over. Without thinking, Daniel shrugged off his coat and wrapped it around her, pulling it tight. The cold hit him instantly, but he ignored it. Stay with me, all right? Just stay with me. The train roared closer, louder, closer. Daniel didn't look. He didn't need to. He already knew. His opportunity was arriving and leaving, right in front of him. He reached into his pocket, pulling out the small amount of cash he had left. Not much, but enough. Wait here, he said, pointlessly, because she wasn't going anywhere. He sprinted to the vending machine across the platform, fumbling with coins, cursing under his breath when one dropped. The train screeched into the station behind him, doors opening, people stepping in, opportunities being taken, lives moving forward. Daniel grabbed the hot drink and a packaged sandwich, rushing back to her side. "Here, try this." He helped her sit up slightly, guiding the warm cup into her trembling hands. She barely managed a sip, but it was something. It had to be enough. Minutes passed, then more. The train doors closed. The sound echoed louder than anything else in that moment. Final, unforgiving. Daniel didn't turn. He couldn't, because if he did, he might regret it, and he didn't want to feel that. Not yet. Instead, he stayed, holding her upright, keeping her awake, talking, nonsense, really, just to keep her from slipping further. Eventually, station staff arrived. Then paramedics. Questions were asked, details exchanged, words like robbed, ID missing, possible hypothermia floated around. But one of the paramedics glanced at Daniel. "You stayed with her?" Daniel nodded. "Yeah." The man gave a small, approving look. "Good thing you did." "Good thing." Daniel almost laughed. He didn't feel like it was a good thing. Not right now. As they lifted her onto the stretcher, her eyes opened again. Just for a moment. She looked at him. Really looked this time. Like she was trying to remember something. Or someone. Her lips parted slightly. But whatever she wanted to say never came. They took her away. Just like that. Gone. Daniel stood alone again on the platform. Colder now. Not just physically. Slowly, he turned toward the tracks. Empty. Silent. His train was gone. His chance. Gone with it. He checked his watch. 9:12 p.m. He had missed it. Not by accident. Not by circumstance. But by choice. And for the first time that night, the weight of that choice settled fully on his shoulders. Heavy. Unavoidable. He let out a long breath, staring into the distance where the train had disappeared. No anger, no dramatic regret, just a quiet, sinking realization. Everything had changed, and he had no idea what that would mean. He pulled his arms around himself, shivering now without his coat. Then, after a long moment, he turned and walked away from the platform, from the night, from the life that could have been. And as the cold swallowed him whole, one truth followed him into the darkness. That night, Daniel didn't just miss a train. He unknowingly stepped onto a path that would ruin his life. Years passed, but not in the way Daniel had once imagined. Time didn't reward him. It didn't circle back with gratitude. It didn't quietly repay sacrifice the way stories often promised. Instead, it took and kept taking. The first year after that night at the train station had been the hardest to understand. Daniel had told himself it was temporary. Missing the train had cost him the interview, yes, but opportunities came and went. Something else would come. Something better, maybe. That's what people always said. Things happen for a reason. He held on to that sentence like it meant something real. At first. But reality didn't follow that script. Weeks turned into months. Emails went unanswered. Calls were never returned. Interviews ended with phrases like, "We've decided to move forward with another candidate." Again and again and again, savings ran out. Rent became a burden instead of a routine. And the small room he once called an apartment turned into something else entirely. A place he stayed, not a place he lived. By the second year, optimism had worn thin. By the third, it had disappeared completely. Now, standing outside a towering glass building in the heart of the city, Daniel barely recognized the man staring back at him in the reflection. His coat was different now, thinner, cheaper, worn at the seams. His shoes had been repaired more times than they were worth. His face, sharper somehow. Not stronger, just tired. Invisible. That was the word. Daniel had become invisible. The kind of person people brushed past without seeing. The kind of presence that didn't register unless it was in the way. He stared up at the building. It was massive, polished, immaculate, and the kind of place where deals worth millions were made in rooms warmer than his entire life had been in years. The name of the company gleamed in silver across the front. Ironically, it wasn't far from the kind of firm he had once dreamed of working for. Before everything shifted. Before one night changed the direction of his life. Daniel exhaled slowly, steadying himself. He wasn't here for a dream anymore. He was here for survival. A cleaning position, night shift, minimum wage, no growth, no future. Just something, anything. Because eviction notices didn't care about pride. He adjusted the strap of his worn bag and pushed through the revolving doors. Warmth hit him instantly. So did silence. Not the empty silence of the train station years ago, but a controlled, curated quiet. The kind that came with wealth, with order, with power. Marble floors stretched beneath his feet, polished so clean they reflected the overhead lights. The reception desk stood at the center like a checkpoint between two worlds. Daniel approached cautiously. The receptionist barely looked up at first. "Can I help you?" Her tone was polite, but distant, professional. Daniel swallowed. I'm here about the job listing, the janitorial position." Now she looked at him. Really looked. A brief pause. Something flickered across her face. Judgment, perhaps, or calculation. Then it disappeared. "Name?" "Daniel Carter." She typed something into her system. "Take a seat. Someone will call you." Daniel nodded, murmuring a quiet, "Thank you," before stepping aside. The waiting area was filled with people who didn't look like him. Tailored suits, confident posture, conversations about investments, strategies, numbers that meant nothing to him anymore. He sat at the edge of a leather chair, careful not to sink too deeply into it. Hands clasped together, eyes down, invisible. Minutes passed, then more. Daniel barely noticed at first when the atmosphere in the lobby shifted. It was subtle, a quiet ripple. Conversations softened. People straightened slightly. Even the receptionist's posture changed. Someone important had arrived. Daniel glanced up absent-mindedly and froze. She walked in surrounded by presence. Not guards, not noise, just presence. The kind that made people move without being asked. Elegant, composed, effortless. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floor as she crossed the lobby, her posture straight, her expression calm but distant. Her hair was styled perfectly, her coat tailored, and her entire appearance untouchable, powerful. Daniel's chest tightened suddenly. Not because of who she was now, but because of who she had been. His heart skipped, then slammed violently against his ribs. No, it couldn't be. But it was. It was her. The girl from the train station. For a moment, time folded in on itself. The cold platform, the trembling hands, the weak voice asking for help. All of it crashed into the present. Only now, she was different. Completely different. Alive. Thriving. Untouchable. Daniel stared, unable to look away. He knew those eyes, even though they weren't glassy with fear anymore. He knew that face, even though it was no longer pale with cold. He knew her, and suddenly, everything inside him shifted. Hope, not the naive kind he used to carry, but something sharper, something desperate. Maybe this was it. And maybe this was why everything had gone wrong, because it was leading to this moment. She would recognize him. Of course she would. How could she not? He had stayed with her when no one else did. He had given up everything for her. This had to mean something. Daniel stood up slowly. His legs felt unsteady. His mind raced ahead, imagining it. Gratitude, recognition, a moment of understanding, maybe even help, not charity, just acknowledgement, closure. He took a step forward, then another, each one heavier than the last. By the time he reached her, his heart was pounding so loudly he could barely hear anything else. "Excuse me," he said, his voice slightly strained. She stopped, turned, and looked at him. For a second, just 1 second, something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, memory. Daniel leaned into that moment, a breath catching. "Yes?" she said. Her voice was smooth, controlled, professional, like he was just another interruption. Daniel swallowed. "It's me," he said quietly. "From the train station, a few years ago. You were—" He didn't finish, because the look on her face changed, not into recognition, into irritation. "I'm sorry," she said flatly. "I don't know what you're talking about." The words landed harder than they should have. Daniel blinked. "No, you were—" He gestured slightly, struggling to find the words. "You were freezing. You'd been robbed. I stayed with you. I think you're mistaken." Her tone sharpened, a subtle shift, but unmistakable. Around them, people had started to notice. Daniel felt it, the attention, the shift. But he pressed on. "You don't remember?" His voice cracked slightly. "The platform, late at night. I gave you my coat." Her expression hardened, and this time, the flicker in her eyes wasn't confusion. It was recognition, brief, gone almost instantly. But Daniel saw it, and that made it worse, because it meant she did remember. She just didn't want to. "Listen," she said, her voice low now, edged with something colder. "I don't know what you're trying to do, but this isn't the place for it." "I'm not trying to—" Daniel shook his head, panic rising. "I'm just saying, I was there, that night. I helped you." A pause. Then a small, humorless smile touched her lips. "Oh," she said softly. "So that's what this is." Daniel frowned. "What?" "You're looking for something." The words were quiet, but sharp, like a blade wrapped in silk. "I'm not—" "Money?" she continued, cutting him off. "A favor? A job?" Daniel's stomach dropped. "No. That's not— Because if you think you can just walk up to me and make up some story, I'm not making it up." His voice rose before he could stop it. The room stilled. Silence spread like a ripple. Daniel felt it immediately. The attention, the judgment. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and in that moment, she made a decision. "I don't know you," she said louder now, clear, firm, each word deliberate. "And I don't appreciate being approached like this." It wasn't just dismissal. It was denial. Public. Final. Daniel's chest tightened painfully. "You remember," he said quietly, desperation creeping in. "I know you do." For a fraction of a second, her composure slipped. Just a fraction. Then it was gone, replaced by something colder, more calculated. "Security." The word cut through the air like a command. Daniel's heart dropped. Two men moved almost instantly, stepping forward from the edges of the lobby. "Sir, we're going to have to ask you to leave." Daniel looked at her, one last time, hoping, searching, for anything, a sign, a crack, something. But there was nothing, only distance, only indifference, only the quiet, deliberate decision to erase him. Hands touched his arm, not roughly but firmly, guiding him away. Daniel didn't resist. He couldn't, because the fight had already left him. As they led him toward the doors, the warmth of the building faded behind him, replaced by something colder than the winter air outside, something deeper, something permanent. When the doors closed behind him, the city noise rushed back in. Cars, voices, movement, life. But Daniel stood still, completely still, like he had been left behind. Again. He stared at the glass doors, his reflection staring back. But it didn't look like him anymore. It looked like someone else, someone smaller, someone broken. His mind replayed the moment over and over. Her eyes, that flicker. She had remembered. He knew she had. And she had chosen not to. Chosen status. Chosen distance. Chosen to pretend he didn't exist. Daniel let out a slow, shaky breath. Something inside him shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like something finally giving way after too much pressure. For years, he had held on to that night, not with regret, but with a kind of quiet belief that it had meant something, that it mattered, that kindness, even when it cost everything, was still worth it. But standing there now, after being erased like he was nothing, that belief cracked, then shattered. Because what if it hadn't mattered? What if it had all been pointless? What if the right choice had been the one he didn't take? His hands clenched slowly at his sides. The cold air cut through his thin coat. But he barely felt it, because something colder had settled inside him. For the first time since that night, since everything fell apart, a thought crossed his mind. Clear, unavoidable, and devastating. What if I shouldn't have helped her? He closed his eyes briefly, his jaw tightening. And when he opened them again, there was nothing left of the hope he once carried, only a quiet, hollow truth. For the first time in his life, Daniel wished he had walked away that night. He stood outside the glass tower until his legs felt numb, staring at his own reflection in the doors that had just swallowed the woman he once saved. Then, slowly, he turned away. He didn't know that across the street, inside a parked black cab, another woman had seen everything. And unlike the girl from the train station, she remembered. Her name was Evelyn Moore. She had been at that same station years ago, sitting alone on the opposite bench with a cracked phone, a delayed train, and a heart full of problems she thought were unbearable at the time. She had watched Daniel notice the freezing girl. She had watched him hesitate, watched his train arrive, and then she watched him choose mercy over ambition. Evelyn had never forgotten the way he took off his coat. Not because he had plenty, but because he didn't. She remembered him running to the vending machine with trembling hands and buying warm food with what looked like his last notes. She remembered him staying until the paramedics came. She remembered the train leaving without him. At the time, Evelyn had thought, a man like that should never be poor. But life had separated them. By the time she tried to find him, he was gone. No name, no number, no trail. Just a face burned into memory. Until now. She watched Daniel walk down the pavement with his shoulders bent, like a man carrying an invisible coffin. Evelyn did not follow immediately. Something in her told her not to frighten him, not to rush in like a savior. Broken people did not trust sudden kindness. They examined it for hidden knives. So she waited. For 3 days, she searched quietly. By the 4th, she found him outside a shelter near King's Cross. or standing in a queue for soup with men who no longer looked anyone in the eye. That was when Evelyn understood. Daniel hadn't only missed a train that night. He had been falling ever since. She approached him carefully. "Daniel Carter?" He turned sharply, suspicion tightening his face. "Yes?" "My name is Evelyn," she said gently. "I work with a community employment program. I heard you might be looking for work." Daniel almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because hope had started to sound insulting. "I'm always looking," he said. "Doesn't mean anyone is hiring. I might know someone who is." He studied her. "And what do you want?" The question hurt her more than she expected, but she understood it. "Nothing," she said. "Just 10 minutes tomorrow. There's a small logistics office near Camden, and they need someone reliable." "Why me?" Evelyn held his gaze. "Because I saw you give up your future for a stranger. Because I searched for you for years. Because the world owes you more than this." But she said none of that. Instead, she answered, "Because you look like someone who still shows up, even when life gives him every reason not to." Daniel looked away first. The next morning he came, not dressed well, not confident, not healed. But he came. The job was small at first. Filing, stock checks, cleaning the back office, helping drivers load packages. Nothing glamorous, nothing close to the life he once dreamed about. But it was honest. And Evelyn never made him feel small for taking it. She did not shower him with money. She did not buy him expensive suits. She did not perform kindness in a way that made him feel owned, and she simply stayed consistent. A hot coffee left on his desk when he arrived early. A quiet, "well done," when he fixed a shipping error everyone else missed. A room in a modest guest flat owned by her aunt, presented not as charity, but as temporary staff accommodation. Daniel accepted each thing slowly, like a wounded animal stepping closer to an open hand. Weeks passed, then months. He began to stand straighter. His face softened, though his eyes remained guarded. Evelyn noticed everything. How he always returned extra change. How he stayed late without announcing it. How he gave his lunch to an elderly cleaner one afternoon and pretended he wasn't hungry. That was when she knew the station had not been a single act. It had been who he was, and that terrified her, because she was falling in love with him, quietly, carefully, and against every rule she had made for herself. Daniel, however, did not see it, or maybe he refused to. Betrayal had made him suspicious of tenderness. Every kindness looked temporary. Every smile felt like something that could be withdrawn. One rainy evening, Evelyn found him still in the office long after closing, sitting beside the window, staring at the street below. "You missed the last bus," she said. "I know." "Then why are you still here?" He gave a faint smile. "Maybe I'm tired of leaving places." The words landed between them. Evelyn sat across from him. For a while, neither spoke. Then Daniel said, "Do you ever wonder if one decision can ruin your whole life?" Evelyn's throat tightened. "Yes," she whispered. "But I also wonder if one decision can save it." He looked at her then. Really looked. And for the first time, and he did not look away quickly. Something changed after that. Not dramatically. There were no grand confessions, no sudden embraces under the rain, just small openings. Daniel began to ask about her day. Evelyn began to laugh around him without hiding it. He fixed the broken hinge on her office cabinet. She remembered exactly how he took his tea. He walked her to her car one evening, then pretended it was because the car park was badly lit. The love grew in ordinary places. That made it more dangerous, because ordinary things were harder to deny. Then one night, Daniel came to work shaken. He had seen the wealthy executive again on the news. The girl from the station. Her name was Clara Whitmore. Heiress, business leader, philanthropist. And she was being praised for launching a foundation for forgotten people. Daniel stared at the screen in silence. Evelyn watched his face close up. She remembered, he said finally. Evelyn said nothing. She looked right at me that day. She remembered. His voice broke on the last word. Evelyn could no longer keep her secret. Not all of it. Daniel, she said softly, some people remember what benefits them. Others remember what made them ashamed. He turned to her. What does that mean? Evelyn's hands trembled slightly. It means, maybe her forgetting says nothing about your kindness. Maybe it only says something about her. He shook his head. You don't understand. I do. No, Evelyn, you don't. I lost everything that night. Everything. And for years I told myself at least I did the right thing. But when she looked at me like I was dirt, he swallowed hard. It made me feel like my life was the price of someone else's comfort. Evelyn stood very still. Then she walked closer. I understand more than you think. Daniel frowned. And there, with the rain tapping against the windows and the office lights dim above them, Evelyn finally told him. I was there. Daniel's expression changed. What? At the station, she said. That night. I saw you. He stared at her as if the room had tilted. I saw you notice her. I saw your train come in. I saw you take off your coat and wrap it around her. I saw you spend your money on food for her. I saw the train leave while you stayed. Daniel said nothing. His face had gone pale. Evelyn's eyes filled, but she kept speaking. I tried to find you afterward. I asked station staff. I checked old incident reports where I could. I even went back to that platform more times than I want to admit. But I didn't know your name. Daniel stepped back slightly, overwhelmed. So this job, all of this, I didn't help you because I pitied you, she said quickly. I helped because years ago, when no one was watching, you showed me what kind of man you were. And when I found you again, I couldn't bear that the world had treated you as if that goodness meant nothing. His eyes shone. For years he had carried that night alone. Now someone else was holding it too. Why didn't you tell me? He whispered. Because I didn't want you to feel like a debt, Evelyn said. And because you had already been humiliated by someone who owed you gratitude. I wanted you to know you were worthy before you knew I had a reason to believe it. Daniel covered his face with one hand. For a long moment, he did not speak. Then his shoulders began to shake. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. Like a man finally setting down a burden he had carried too long. Evelyn did not touch him at first. She waited. Then Daniel lowered his hand and looked at her. You remembered? Her answer came immediately. Every detail. That broke him. He turned away, but she saw the tears anyway. I thought it was wasted, he said. I thought I ruined my life for nothing. Evelyn stepped closer. No, she said. You saved a life, and maybe no one rewarded you then. Maybe the person you helped didn't deserve the sacrifice, but the act itself was never worthless. Daniel looked at her, and his eyes full of pain and disbelief. And you? He asked quietly. Why did you keep staying? Evelyn's breath caught. This was the edge, the place she had avoided for months. But love, when held back too long, becomes its own kind of ache. Because I tried not to love you, she said. Daniel went still. Evelyn gave a small, trembling laugh, embarrassed by her own honesty. I really did. I told myself you were healing. I told myself you needed stability, not feelings. I told myself I was only helping you rebuild. Her voice softened. But then you started becoming yourself again. And I realized I wasn't just admiring the man I saw that night. I was falling in love with the man sitting across from me every day. Daniel's face changed slowly. Shock first, then fear, then something fragile. Evelyn. You don't have to say anything, she said quickly. I know you've been hurt. I know trust doesn't come easily. I'm not asking you to become someone you're not ready to be. But what if I don't know how? He asked. How to what? How to be loved without waiting for it to disappear. Evelyn's eyes filled again. Then we learned slowly. The room fell silent. Daniel looked at her as if she was something he had stopped believing existed. Not rescue, not reward, not miracle. A person who had seen him when he thought no one had. A person who had remembered. Weeks later, Daniel returned to Platform 6. This time, Evelyn came with him. The station looked different in daylight. Less haunted, less cruel. But Daniel still felt the old cold in his bones. He stood near the bench where he had found Clara Whitmore years ago. For a long while, he said nothing. Then he removed his coat, not to give it away this time, but to fold it over his arm. I hated this place, he said. Evelyn stood beside him. And now? Daniel looked down the tracks. A train arrived in the distance, headlights cutting through the gray morning. I think I blamed the wrong thing. Evelyn glanced at him. I thought the train took my future, he continued. But maybe it only took the future that wasn't meant to hold me. The train slowed. Doors opened. People stepped on. People stepped off. Life kept moving. But Daniel no longer felt abandoned by it. He turned to Evelyn. You made me feel seen again. She smiled softly. You were always seen. He reached for her hand. Not suddenly. Not with certainty that everything would be easy, but with the quiet courage of a man choosing to live again. And Evelyn's fingers closed around his. And for the first time in years, Daniel did not think about the girl who forgot him. Clara's ingratitude no longer had power over his story. She had been one chapter, a painful one, but not the ending. The ending began with the woman who had witnessed his lowest sacrifice and turned it into the beginning of something tender, something real, something he had not missed, something that had been finding its way to him all along. Daniel looked at the train, then at Evelyn, and smiled through tears. He had once lost a future on this platform. Now, standing in the same place, he found one. Because sometimes the world doesn't reward your kindness immediately. It sends someone who never forgets it.